Welcome to the Future Proof Leader podcast. I'm Jessica Raypach, co-founder of Twin Legacy Solutions. And today I have Michael Stier. He is the area president of the Carolinas for Focus CFO. Very excited. CFO talk, learning a lot about finances today. Michael, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Let's kick it off with you kind of telling the audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your mission is.
Happy to, and thanks for inviting me, Jess. I appreciate you being on your podcast. So Focus CFO, by and large, we provide fractional CFO services to small and mid-sized businesses. We've been doing this for 25 plus years. We're one of the early pioneers in the space and the largest in the country now doing this. What is it we do? Our target market, who we work with, are basically founder-led, small, mid-sized businesses that need the guidance of a forward-looking, strategic finance exec on their leadership team, but they don't need it full-time. That's what we're in the business of doing. Our CFOs join that leadership team fractionally, typically a day or two a week, but they are on that leadership team typically for years, helping that business grow and prosper through what they're doing. And we provide our CFOs who have decades of experience provide a lot of that guidance that the typical founder-led business doesn't inherently have when they first start up. So they typically only have a bookkeeper, so they're staying compliant and hopefully filing their taxes, hopefully. But that is all that stuff that's happened in the past. What the CFO's job is here is to help the leadership team decide what happens next quarter, next year, 5 years from now. 15 years from now, where do they want to take that business, and helping them build the financial roadmap to get there and be part of the team to help them actually execute it, which is typically what they don't have.
I love your strategic thinking. We're all about strategy. So I love, yes, you're fractional now, but you're looking 5, 10, 15 years ahead, and that's amazing. So thank you for the introduction. Super qualified, obviously. So a lot of companies are talking. We'll see. I'm sure. 25 years in the business, I'm sure. A lot of top companies are talking AI right now. People come to the podcast a lot to hear some feedback, right? So what was the moment you realized that AI could fundamentally change how your CFOs operate on a day-to-day basis?
Fairly recently. I'd say certainly within we've been dabbling, obviously, as a lot of people have, for several years right now, but the capabilities of the models and the engines have gotten to the point now where it fills an interesting productivity gap for us. Being the CFOs in a small, mid-sized business, they don't have the support team underneath it. At best they have an a bookkeeper, maybe a controller, but that forward-looking analyst type role typically never exists in that kind of business. And it would always fall on the CFO to do that as well. They like to build their own models. And it's not the most effective use of a senior executive's time. What the AI tools have really evolved into over the last year is being able to leverage the time and expertise of our CFOs. Their productivity as far as being able to generate forecast models, analysis, do cash flow projections, the productivity that has increased dramatically as we've adopted more and more of these tools, allowing the CFOs now to take the time that they do spend with these clients and focuses on, all right, now we have the information. What do we do with that information? How do we turn that into a financial roadmap? How do we turn that into key metrics and the information that the leadership team and the owner needs to make true informed business decisions?
And that's important, right? So recently on the podcast, I've had a couple guests mention like the financial capability of Claude, specifically a tool, has been pretty tremendous with integrating with what they have with their financial systems. Some to the point where they're like, we don't need any financial department. I'm like, cringe, a little cringeworthy. I think you have to really stay on top of what you're putting in understanding and managing what you're getting out, right? So yes, having a CFO actually take the time to analyze, well, we have the information now much quicker than we used to. So let's really focus on the strategy behind where we go from here. So awesome. I'm assuming do you guys use AI tools and introduce those tools to clients? Are you seeing clients that have financial AI tools already embedded into their software? Like what are you seeing right now in the market?
Somewhat, but I think by and large, we're introducing, especially into the finance function.
Yeah.
Right. They may have some tools out there that help them reconcile their books a little bit quicker. Right. All right, classify things a little bit easier. But when it comes to, that's the accounting side of that. Whereas the finance is the forward-looking, what happens next? How do we project out next? And those tools have just started really to become really kind of fully functional and usable and leverageable by the CFO. I don't ever expect that, AI is never going to replace a CFO because there's a lot more to being a CFO and the value they provide to a business than just running another forecasting model, right? It's about it's now taking that information and marrying it to the business strategy. So, all right, let's build the roadmap. What can we do? Do we have the cash in place how do we grow this business? What is the right strategy to take place in that? What do we need from a capital stack, operationally, people oriented? Do we have the facilities in place? AI is not going to be able to do that from looking at accounting information, right? But it's going to help us be a lot more effective and do a lot more with the amount of time that we have with our clients.
Yes. And around financials, a lot of questions that pop up are the security, like the data security.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to the companies? Some companies are fearful to use AI at all in any kind of financial capacity because of the data security behind it, cybersecurity. What do you say to companies like, is it safe? Is it not safe? What's your take on it?
Well, more than just a take on it, we have a very deliberate policy that we've implemented around that. So our internal fractional CIO for our business made sure that in our policies that all of our CFOs are using these tools. They're not using the free public tools, right? It's going to be Microsoft Copilot or Claude, but within the secured enterprise level arrangement where the data is not used to train public models and is stored securely within the container for that particular client and with obviously within our firm. So we're very deliberate about that.
Right. I think that's really important. I think the laws around AI are so I wouldn't say they're just not very well defined in any of the spaces right now, not that we've seen. So it's good that your company is taking some forward action into protecting your clients when it comes to data security.
Most, especially these smaller firms or even larger firms, their employees are playing with tools right now. What, half a dozen that you could find within any organization. They're typically all the free version. Their employees are uploading company data, sometimes very proprietary data to try to get some value or try to show that they can generate some value out of that. And they don't know where that data is going.
Yes.
Right. And that's kind of a scary thought.
It is a scary thought, especially with finances in particular. It's funny because you'd think there's some companies that are like, we're not touching it with financial information. And then some companies are all in. Like I haven't seen much of a middle ground. But so like you said, I'm glad that you guys are being intentional about that and very particular about how you're using it. So that's cause for one less thing people have to stress about when they work with you. That's really nice. So traditionally, CFO teams spend massive amounts of times in spreadsheets, reconciliations, reporting, manual analysis. What types of work have you been able to streamline with AI so that your team can focus on that strategic thinking?
Okay, so let's separate the two things because you mentioned doing reconciliations and other accounting functions.
Yes.
Again, very important functions. A firm absolutely or business absolutely needs to have really good numbers about what has happened in the past, right? From a financial perspective. So that's accounting, the reconciliation, classifying data, et cetera. And so that's the purview of the company's accounting manager, their controller, of which the CFO will oversee as part of that. But the really important are the value add specifically for that finance function that the CFO is leading, is to be able to then take those accurate numbers and turn them into forward-looking forecasts, budgets, analyses, to be able to say, all right, here's what our numbers tell us today. Here's where we think we want to take the business as far as acquiring new customers, doing different products. You get the general gist of it. What do we need to be able to support that? How's that going to impact us both from a capital availability, from a employee and other resource capability? Do we have enough people? Do we have the facilities? Do we have the right machines? Whatever it is required to do that. And then what's it going to take to acquire those? And how does that change our cost structure to make sure that we're going to do it in a financially sound fashion? A lot of entrepreneurs, founders by nature are visionaries. They have great ideas. That's why they got into this business, right? So this is not a knock on them, but a lot of those same visionaries are like, I have a really great idea. Let's toss it around for a little bit. And then they're going to jump on their team and go, all right, let's go. We're going to execute this. But they never really think it through all the way to the operational side. I've gone into clients now where they had a leader like that and were technically insolvent from a cash flow perspective because nobody was managing what's the downstream implications of taking on 10 new clients or putting up this new production line or going into a different product line along the way. And what's that going to do to our available capital, our cash flow, our facilities? And that's where things get into trouble because the visionary is, they're just looking top line. How do I keep going to where we are? And they need that complementary person, right? A complementary person is going to be their COO or their CFO, or sometimes that's a combination of those two things. You say, great, That's a great vision right here. Let's model out to see what we need and then decide, does it make sense to do that, right? Are we actually be profitable at it? Or maybe it makes sense, but it may not make sense today. We have work to do for the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever, to be able to get to that point where we can then actually execute upon that idea successfully, profitably.
Yeah, I'm like feeling the stress of all of the, we get the visionary, like I could feel the stress of like a CFO. Are you finding that because there's so much more information available at our fingertips, like with AI and all this data, are CFOs feeling the heat from that? Like, are they being more utilized like to figure out a lot more things, or are they just feeling like, okay, this is more organized? Like, what are you seeing? Like, I guess it could go both ways, right? Like, oh, they're organized. They actually know their numbers, and before they didn't. Or, oh my goodness, they have all this data and now they just like it's just overwhelming.
So there's a couple aspects to answer that question. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
So the general statement, which you can apply almost to any profession, right, is that the CFO is not going to be replaced by AI, but a CFO may be replaced by a different CFO who knows how to use AI really well to be much more effective,
Yeah, I get
right?
that.
And so that's why we want to make sure that we're kind of skating to where the puck is going, to borrow that metaphor, to
Yeah.
make sure that our CFOs have the skill set and the tools so that they can be very effective in what they're doing, and not be replaced by some other firm, potentially another fractional CFO that does. Other than that, it's right now our clients are playing with it, and where I'm seeing the playing where they're having the most somewhat impact is maybe on the marketing side, generating some campaigns,
Oh
some
yeah.
new advertising ideas, generating graphics, whatever it is what they're doing. No real impact on the operational side of their business yet,
Oh,
what we're
really?
seeing.
I've been seeing different things about, across different industries. Like, before we started the podcast, some industries I was like, they fully automated all of their menial
Sure.
task is what I like to say to make room for creativity, which I love. Like just automating all those things, moving on to more strategic approach to their business. Like imagine if we all kind of like stopped spending half our day at our emails and then went to actually do what we love and our passion came to fruition, like that would be amazing, right? Isn't that the ultimate goal? And then companies that, like you said, just like they're so overwhelmed. They don't know, like, oh, what do we use? We need to use something. And I always say, just don't start implementing stuff unless you really understand it. Or do a little like playing with, data and stuff and try to find a tool that works best for your business. But it's like anything else. It's very custom to what your mission is. Not this,
100%.
you know what I mean? Like, and I know like a lot of people are saying like, Claude is getting quite advanced with integrating, Pilot too into established softwares across different, their procurement industry, the manufacturing, like all those systems that I'm seeing integrate with Claude. I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. Like it's learning quite quickly. But I feel like most of those companies have the technology teams behind it, right?
It needs to be focused on what are you trying to solve, right?
100%.
I was in management consulting for decades, right, prior to this.
Yeah.
And there was always a term of doing solution probleming versus the other way around,
Yes.
right? I have this great tool, this great solution. Let's try to find problems to apply it to.
100.
Right.
Yes.
And you can
Yeah.
spend a lot of time doing that versus what do you really, hey, where are the biggest gaps or the biggest inefficiencies? And are they solvable,
Yeah.
right, by this technology? Some absolutely yes. I mean, my daughter was going to go into graphic design and marketing. Graphic design is a dead field, right? Because of AI, right? For the most part. Right. So she's moving on to something else,
Yeah.
that part. But if you're running, a $20 million construction firm or a manufacturing firm, yeah, there's opportunities for some efficiencies and processes.
Oh yeah.
But AI is not going to be running the big yellow iron digging up the dirt in the commercial site, right?
Right. Oh, 100% not.
You know, there'll be opportunities for doing that in various businesses, but it will take some time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some industries are replacing their like that's why I go back to like the CFOs if they're feeling the heat of this, right? So I can imagine if you're getting rid of your financial, like your base of your financial teams, the CFO is going to be left. Obviously, you have to have a chief, like you have to have a chief. They're going to be left with a lot more responsibility, I would think. So maybe your business improves a lot because I would think that people would maybe want more fractional CFOs, right? So that they don't
Yeah,
have to have these big teams. So because they have like some kind of, AI system or some kind of system that they can implement and then the CFO can walk in. But I can imagine from what I learned a little bit about being, in the operation side for finances, that job becomes like a big responsibility. Yeah. I don't know.
it does. Over the finance umbrella, the biggest opportunity for efficiency improvement right now is on the basic accounting, bookkeeping
Okay.
side, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, clearly where maybe a business in the past had three or four, accounting clerks,
Right.
doing what they, doing the process, those kind of repetitive processes are ripe for some improvement in having these AI tools take over a bunch of that kind of stuff. And they're starting to get there over time. But that's the repetitive stuff, right? And there's some process knowledge there, but not a tremendous amount. But that's okay for reporting on what's happening in the past. But someone still has to overlook it, make sure things weren't classified incorrectly, right? Throws your balance sheet weight off, et cetera. But the role of CFO is then taking it from there, the numbers from there, marrying it to the business strategy and go, all right, where are we taking this business? What is the financial roadmap to
Yeah.
actually get us to meet those goals? An AI tool is never going to do that. I think the biggest issue is that most owners in our space, right, the small, mid-sized business space, they don't have that financial acumen. They don't have the experience in it. A lot of times when I speak with owners, they don't even know what a CFO really does. You say CFO and they think accounting, right? They think they're a bookkeeper, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore they may think, oh, I don't need a CFO. I'm just going to use AI to improve my bookkeeping process. Yes, but that's not being a CFO. So there's an educational process about what they need from that financial leadership, that executive on their leadership team to help them guide the business forward and to ultimately help build value in their business. That is not going to be replaced by any tool.
Absolutely not. And like I said, everybody should be thinking strategy now, especially with all the new technology. But can you talk to us about an example of like, have you worked with a company that didn't ever have a CFO? You guys attach a CFO. What was the difference between like the outcomes there, like value add?
Well, have I ever worked with them? Every single one of my clients have
Oh,
been businesses that never previously had a CFO.
whoa. So yes, tell us more.
That is the nature of what we do. And typically we're getting the best way for me to explain is what got us in the door. As I mentioned to you earlier in kind of our pre-call, 98% of our clients come from a warm referral from somebody who is a trusted advisor to that business owner already. For example, it could be their banker, it could be their CPA, could be their wealth planner, financial planner, maybe insurance advisor, somebody who has sufficient visibility into that owner and their business to understand when they're struggling, right? When they're having growing pains or whatever it is, or cash flow pains, and they're making that suggestion that hey, that you should talk to somebody because I think you may need a CFO in your business, right? So that's the starting point for the conversation. So what are those typical pain points that we wind up seeing?
Right,
A could be the business has been growing pretty rapidly,
right.
right? And so, but from a foundational perspective of core systems and processes to support the operation of that business, they're operating like they're still like this size when they're now this size. Things
Oh,
are
yeah.
things are breaking all over the place. What are the symptoms that we see? We see, they can't, they're still way behind in closing their financial statements. Their monthly close is a month or two late, right? Their CPA is still waiting for some financial information to be able to file their tax return. The banker is going crazy because they haven't filed financial reports in 3 months when they were supposed to do it every month. Whatever it happens to be, and they just see that they see the symptoms of stuff breaking all over the place, and that's where we come in. Because our CFOs have not only been working for decades in businesses of their size, but typically of businesses that are multiples of size bigger than where they are right now. They know what needs to be in place and help get that business to a point where not only can they right size for where they are today, but build a foundation so that they can grow to be 2x, 3x, 10x of where they are now, right, along the way. But it takes that trusted advisor to introduce somebody in, and then we have to explain what a CFO really does. Once they get it, they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't really know I needed this, but where have I been without you?"
Well, 100%. I feel like that's maybe a lot of companies flop because, like you said, they continue to operate here. They're going to here, and then they can't support their clients and their mission, and everything kind of falls to the wayside.
These single or the two biggest single symptoms, visible symptoms are A, as I mentioned before, they can't generate any financial statements. They really don't know what's going on. But as a result of that, where they really struggle and what really hits the business is their cash flow tanks and they get into a liquidity crunch because they've grown. Growth takes cash, right? It's a torpedo to your cash flow until you catch up, right? And if it's not managed very carefully, I've been referring to clients where they grew from 0 to 20 million in revenue within just a couple of years and then almost went under because they couldn't pay their bills or they couldn't pay, do payroll because they just lost track of cash flow. into the business, right? It's that kind of discipline that doesn't typically exist in a entrepreneurial founder-led business.
Is there an income, a recommended like income? When a company hits X, they should get a CFO. Or is it really like dependent on what you're doing?
I'd say, when you're a startup, you're just bootstrapping and trying to get going. You could do the QuickBooks stuff yourself, but there's different degrees. So I know some fractional CFOs who are not part of our firm who focus on smaller businesses, and they work with businesses from 500,000 to maybe 2 million in revenue. They don't need a lot of time from them, but they still need that guidance. Our model, because we embed a CFO on that leadership team, and they're there every week,
Yeah.
working with that client. They're typically a little bit larger businesses. So our sweet spot is maybe 3 to 5 million in the low end, up to about 50 million. It's where most of the new relationships come in. It's a sizable business. There's things going on that they absolutely need that kind of strategic guidance, but they don't need it full time still.
That makes sense. And there, what is a commit? Like, would you say once you get a CFO, you should always have a CFO? Or is right? Like, I feel like once you know, you know.
For us, our average relationship length with a client, I'm assuming we're the right fit for each other, is somewhere around 6 years. But that's average. We've had some clients that we've been working on for 12, 14 years. What typically happens for us, we're doing our job right, is if the relationship ends, it ends for two reasons. One is we've helped them grow sufficiently enough that, like, I think it's time for us to graduate to a full-time CFO. Great, success story. We go help them be part of the recruiting process, find our replacement, we move on.
Yeah.
The other scenario, which probably happens a little bit more often, is we've helped them grow the business and it's healthy and they wind up getting acquired.
Yeah.
And then typically, the buyer's a big strategic or private equity. They already have their financial people in place. But along that way, through the acquisition process, we're sitting there with the owner and their team on their side of the table, basically through due diligence, right? As these firms are looking to acquire them, to help them look really smart in the eyes of the buyer, right? Because the CFO has full command of the business's numbers. And that's what a buyer is most interested in. If you know your stuff and you can answer the questions and you have a narrative about how the business is going to succeed and how those numbers are not only going to continue, but continue to grow under the new leadership, you need a CFO who's going to kind of prepare those forecasts and build the narrative to show how that's going to work.
Yeah, you make a good point. So basically, you're trying to work yourself out of a job. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come hire us and we will try to work ourselves out of a job. But then, that's how you got your 98% referrals, because that's success right there. And that's amazing. But yeah, that's a good point. Setting yourself up for, I've learned recently, because I've been doing podcasts, there's a lot of organizations that help you kind of like, where are you going to be in 10 years? Do you want to sell in 10 years? Do you want to build your company so you can sell it whenever you want to sell it and it can run itself, So I've been doing a couple podcasts with, coaches that do that. And you'd be surprised how many people don't realize like how you're devaluing your business by not investing in certain things. I would think a CFO would be one of those things to make sure like no one's going to buy a company that has sloppy finances or doesn't have a strategic plan in place. They won't take that company over. They won't acquire them. So that's a really good point that you make there, because we didn't dive into every single element, but I would assume that I wouldn't buy a company that was financially sloppy, if you will. That's great.
It's interesting. You've actually hit onto our mission statement, right? Our core focus.
Okay.
Our mission statement is to help our clients build sustainable and transferable business value.
I love that.
Right? Which means that we are helping them get their business ready and attractive for whatever somebody's going to come in and look at their business.
Yes.
Right. And so, yes, the table stakes are, if you don't know your existing numbers, if your financials are sloppy, people are not even going to, the conversation's over. It's gone.
Right.
But that's just the starting point, right? Really,
100%.
once you pass that, the conversation more or less is, basically it's a risk analysis. What is the risk to me as a buyer that the cash flow that you're generating today, right, and projected to generate in the future will actually materialize once you, Mr. Owner, Mrs. Owner, are gone.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
That is, and then what's my ability to, maybe invest more and grow it even faster? That is actually where the real value of the CFO comes in. It's the buyers are not paying for the EBITDA that you generated in the past.
Right.
They're paying you for what they think the EBITDA they're going to be able to generate is after they buy you. And that's all around systems and processes and people and structure, everything that takes it out of the owner's head,
Oh,
right? And puts it in
100%.
there, right?
Yes.
When I talk to owners about some objective of I want to exit this business in 3 years, 5 years, whatever I don't care what their time frame is.
Yeah.
I set the goal. One of the goals we have to accomplish is that you need to be able to take a 6 week vacation. And not only does the business operate, but that most of your employees don't even know you're gone, of which I get this big gulp because
Yeah.
most owners are, it's their baby, right?
Yeah.
They're in every bit of the weeds of the business. It's kind of antithetical to how they think, but it's not antithetical if you think about it from perspective of a potential buyer, right?
100%.
And
Well,
so
I
we're
used
just
to
trying to
think,
change your mindset.
and I would think, like, I think what he was, this one, I think it was Dave Pennington, he was talking
Mhm.
about how people wait until like they've decided, "Oh, I really want to exit the business before they're looking at these numbers." And he said, with the people literally can triple the value of their businesses if they start at the beginning and actually establish a business that is already in the mindset of transferring their business. And people just don't build that way. And the people that are getting like triple return. Like he's seeing it on a day-to-day basis. He's like, he has like this form or something you can fill out. He's like, you'd be surprised. People don't plan for this. And he said the same thing. He goes, what if you should be able to walk away from your business for like a couple weeks and like nobody notices. And to me, I'm thinking I'm Marine Corps, oh, it's leadership. It should be able to run because you're a leader, but everything, every aspect should be able to run, and that's great.
There's a cliche in the space, which is very true. When's the best time to start planning for the exit of your business? It's the day you start it,
100%. I
right?
learned that though. I wouldn't think that. Not
Yeah,
many people think that though.
but the next best time is today. I don't care what your time frame is, because if you build your business so that it could run without you, that you have, the people, the processes, and systems, at the end of the day, it's just going to be a better operating, more profitable business in general, of which you as the owner are going to enjoy it more, right?
Right.
Versus being stuck in the data grind of running everything yourself, because every decision, every detail has to run through your fingers.
Right. No,
Right.
I think that'd be the dream. I would you built this thing from the ground up and you want it to be yours and you want to own it, but you also want it to sustain itself, right? Who
Mhm.
doesn't want to take a 6 weeks vacation and still be making money? Like
Well, you
I
think most business owners, founders, the reality is that they're almost their entire net worth, their retirement is built in that business. There's very little assets outside of that. And if you don't ultimately achieve that goal, your next chapter, welcome to Walmart.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Literally. And so that's a scary thought,
Yeah.
right? Or I've had founders who have literally died in the chair and their spouse is now stuck with the business and they
Oh.
have no idea what's going on and the value tanks and all that. So if you're running a better operating business, that'll have value to somebody else.
And that starts with calling you for a CFO. So where can
But
people find you? Where can people find you, Michael?
so the easiest thing, focuscfo.com. Myself and all of my colleagues are there, depending on what part of the country you're in. Michael Stier on LinkedIn, if you want to go that way. So it's the easiest thing in the world.
I love it. Thank you so much. I've learned more than I thought I would in a
It was a
day.
fun conversation. Thank you.
It's always fun to learn about this stuff. And now, one more thing I have to add to what I need to build into my business, CFO from Michael. Got it, noted. Well, thank you for being on the show, Michael. It was very informative. I appreciate all your feedback and all your knowledge that you've been able to give us in this topic. And to our listeners, until next time, we'll see you. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.